So, Shauna, I always like to go back with my guests. And for you, what was your introduction to fitness and how did it evolve to where you are now?
It's kind of it goes back, honestly, like really far, far back. Growing up, I was a competitive swimmer. So I used to swim from like age 6 to 18. I was like Olympic trials level. So I started off in my fitness journey just differently, like as an athlete. And how it kind of shifted was when I was 18, I got a really bad rotator cuff injury and I ended up stopping swimming. And I honestly ended up kind of like losing myself in identity. And I gained a lot of weight. And you obviously turn 19, you start drinking all these different things. And I kind of like fell out of athletics. And that's when I found fitness, was when I got into this point where I just like was really unhappy with my body. I had no purpose, didn't know what I was doing. And so I hired a personal trainer and she actually used to do bodybuilding shows. And so I did a show and I got really into that. So in like 2015, I did my first bodybuilding show. And that was really like my first dive into fitness. So I did a show and it went really well for me, but it was kind of a double edged sword because it really created this like restrictive approach in terms of fitness for me. And it was super unhealthy. I think a lot of times we think that like what somebody looks like in terms of their body equals health. And it was the complete opposite for me. It actually got me in this spot where I was really restricted with food, all of that stuff. And after that, I really had to challenge myself and figure out like how I could create more balance with fitness. And so that's how it's evolved to what it is now.
I don't think people talk enough about growing up as athletes. And then once you graduate high school, or even if you continue to do it in college or university, what you do after, because you literally dedicate your entire life to this sport. And then it's like nothing. And like you said, a lot of times you gain weight, your whole social circle changes. And it's just like, what's next? And I think fitness can be the next step for a lot of people, myself included. But I appreciate you saying that you went through this kind of awkward phase, I guess you could say, before you found fitness again. And then you had your own challenges and journey with that. But I feel like I'm just getting out of this phase with COVID, and a lot of my listeners can relate. I was on the dance team,
Yeah.
dance forever, really into fitness,
Yeah.
and then everything shut down. And it's this real journey finding your way back to it in a way that's sustainable. If you're okay talking about it, I want to get
Yeah.
more into that restrictive phase. Again, that's something I relate to. A lot of my listeners
Mhm.
can relate to. And then how did you kind of pull yourself out and realize this maybe wasn't the healthiest, best thing for you and your body?
Yeah, I think like first off, in terms of like the fitness thing, I think that exactly like we don't talk about it enough. And even people in my circle who have kids, just this like identity that you put through, it's also just shifting and changing, right? Like fitness doesn't have to look like one thing. And I think as an athlete, we think that it's like X way. And it, when you get out of that, it kind of like takes you back to this all or nothing mindset. So shifting and changing, and sometimes your journey to get back into it like takes time, and that's okay. In terms of like restrictiveness, honestly, it was a really, really big struggle for me, and I still deal with it now. So like it still comes up for me. And I think, especially in our society, like it's just we constantly are seeing all these fad diets and things like that. And we're so much information. And so with myself, like I got into bodybuilding and I did a bikini show and it was amazing because I gained so much confidence and knowledge, but it really, really put me in this point where I felt like that was my set point. So if
Hmm.
your listeners aren't familiar with, like bodybuilding shows and bikini, you have to get extremely lean, like 6% body fat for a female, which is really, really unnatural. Like most girls lose their periods, like all of that thing. And it put me in this mindset that if I wasn't there and I didn't stay there, that I wasn't like I just put a lot of worth into it. Like I felt like worthy there. I felt like that was the way I looked the best, but I didn't really set myself up for success because again, like that's just not sustainable. And when I did my bodybuilding competition, my coach at the time, it was extremely bro science, which kind of means like, everything's really plain. So it was extremely restrictive. Like I had to eat chicken and broccoli, white fish. Like I even boiled my fish. And it became super obsessive, like borderline eating disorder for me, where I would honestly, like I would cut everything out and I could sustain that, or I could stick to that plan. But the minute I went off, I had this like insane all or nothing mindset that I felt like I failed. So I had anything off of that plan. So even if that was like a nut, like a peanuts or whatever, I had anything over that plan, I went into this spiral of just binging because I had, like I said, I was just so restrictive and it created such an unhealthy relationship with food for me and my body. And after my show, I did really well in the show and that was great. And I got to this goal and it was awesome. But after the show, I had no way of navigating. And it was very similar to honestly, like athletics that are very extreme, anything in extreme, right? Where after my show, I went back to my like normal ish eating and I had gained 30 pounds again. And so I really, really had to play with what was I able to maintain? Because I love fitness. I love feeling good in my body, but I also am that person. Like I love going out for a glass of wine. And I think it's so important in life to realize that what's sustainable for you. And so afterwards, I had to work on like the biggest thing was my mindset around food and not having this all or nothing mindset and asking myself always like, what was sustainable, and what set point could I get to, or what area point in my body that I felt confident. I also was able to, feel good, be in my fitness journey, but also maintain it long term. And so once I was able to create that, that's kind of how my business evolved, was because I realized so many women struggle with this. There's so many diets and societal pressures to be lean all the time, but finding sustainability was so important for me in my journey.
There's so much information out there, which is a good thing. But I feel like a lot of times we get the cherry picked versions of things and it's just the highlight reel. So it might be that photo of someone who's won a bikini competition or the things leading up, but then they don't post for like 6 months and that like
Yeah.
reverse diet journey or coming off a show. So I think
Yeah.
it's a tale of caution too. And I really appreciate you also bringing awareness to this topic of like, here are both
Yeah.
sides of it. Now, coming out of it, I'm really curious, what are some of your non-negotiables for living this balanced, sustainable life? Like some of the things that are a must for you?
Yeah. So one I would say would be like daily steps, and like a walk every single day is so important to me. And it's just like a non negotiable that I stick to. And I think that a lot of times we underestimate how much just walking, like we're constantly sitting at desks and that kind of thing. And it just affects our mental. And so going on a walk every single day is just a non negotiable for me. And now I honestly live by the 80-20 rule. It's like my non negotiable always. And I feel like it's something that so many of us can sustain, and you can do it while you're on vacation. Maybe that's going to look a little bit different then, but 80-20 rule just essentially is 80% whole foods, 20% fun foods. And it's not maybe always going to look exactly like that, but that is, I would say, like what I live by in terms of non negotiables in my diet, because restriction doesn't work and you have to enjoy life. And you're never going to look back and be like, oh, I didn't eat that chocolate bar for a month. Like you're going to think about the piece of cake at your birthday. Like you're never going to think about that. You're going to think about the experiences that come up. So 80-20 rule is a like best tip that I live by.
I want to dive a bit deeper into getting your steps in because we both live in
Yeah.
Vancouver. It can be so fucking rainy here. And I know I get depressed if I can't go for an hour walk every single day. But sometimes it's just you can, especially working in a 9 to 5 job. If it's dark out before you leave for work in the morning, it's dark when you come home. Do you have tips to getting those steps in?
It is such a hard one, honestly. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all, because I feel like sometimes I'm like, just get it done, just do it. And sometimes you have to have that discipline, like even when you don't want to. But I'm going to be realistic. Like I'm the exact same, like living in Vancouver or like a place that it's snowing or raining, you just are not realistically going to get out. And again, it's not giving yourself like unsustainable goals. I think one thing with my clients that I say is like taking stairs where you can. Like if you go, like grocery shopping, park a block away. Walking pads, I think, are amazing. I actually don't have one and I've been meaning to get one, but I feel like that's like a really great way to do it, especially if you're in a place that's not sunny all the time.
I want a walking pad so bad. And my boyfriend is like, where are we going to put it in this basement soon? I'm like, it's for my mental health. Like, this is a business
Yes,
expense. I need it in my life.
literally. It's a write off, but they're super small. Like the new ones, when I see, they literally just slide under your desk, right?
Totally. If
Yeah.
anyone listening has recommendations and has one, DM
Yeah.
both of us because we are in the market.
Yes, I know. And that's the thing about Vancouver as well. Like, I don't want to be negative whatsoever, but like Canada just does not get the good stuff. Like, you can go on Amazon and order a walking pad in the States like that. But in Canada, it's just like, I think it's like double the price because I've looked at them
It
before
is.
on Canadian Amazon. And yeah, I know.
And if you want the cute pink one, forget about it. It's like a 6 month waiting list. Trust
I
us.
know. I'm like, if it's not white, I do not want it. Like, if it doesn't match my aesthetics, I don't want it.
Totally. I want to get a bit more into the business side because I'm sure my
Yeah.
audience is familiar with you and your business. But along with being a fitness professional and coach, you have your own apparel brand, Miko Collective.
Yeah.
And I want to know a bit of the nitty gritty. So, not only the inspiration behind it, but now that you've reached this place of sustainability when it comes to your own health practices, do
Mhm.
you feel pressure to stay up with trends in the social media and fitness space as a business owner?
I think are we talking like more like healthy trends, like diet trends, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I don't anymore because I feel like I've done this for so long and I just know how much sustainability is important. Like I just see so many of my like clients and even like friends and there are so many tips and tricks and like the best weight loss food and the best thing for a supplement, etc. And I just think at the end of the day, like when we hyper focus, it's so much more simple than we think it is. Like our
Yeah.
fitness journeys and getting to our goals, it truly is about sustainability and consistency. Like at the end of the day, if you cannot sustain it, you won't, even if you get to that goal, you'll lose it because you can't sustain it. And then what can you be consistent with? So I don't really feel like I focus on that anymore just because I know that what works for me works for me. And that is so important in your fitness journey and literally anything, honestly. Like there's going to be something that works for somebody, whether that's business, fitness, there's going to be something that works for somebody else. And I think it's really important, like in your journey, and literally whether that's fitness or business, to learn about yourself, your habits, your own mindsets around food, around your systems, and figure out what works best for you. Because at the end of the day, like exactly like I said, if you can stay consistent with something but somebody else can't, like that works for you and that doesn't work for them. So I think I think it's important to like you can always have fun and try different things, but at the end of the day, know that there's no like end all be all and like perfect or magic system.
I'm really glad you said that. I'm a big believer that there is a diet for every body, but just because
Yeah.
your best friend or your coworker is plant-based and they have the best energy, they've reached their goals, maybe that's not right for you and vice versa. So there's a lot of noise out there, but finding something like you said that you can actually stick to and makes you feel good is I think the
Yeah.
best option.
100%. And something that I feel like not that I like get judgment on, and I don't know why I don't share more often, but like I have a chocolate bar every second day. Like a literally like a regular one. And sometimes when I say that to people, they're like, "Oh yes, like Whole Foods, is it organic, like dark chocolate?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, like a Kit Kat. I have a Kit Kat every second day, or like a Twix or whatever." Because at the end of the day, if I have that every second day, it's like what 200 calories, and that keeps me sustainable. And all my other meals are Whole Foods. It's like it's such a small chunk. It's like 5% of my 2 days. And that's gonna keep like make me happy, affect my mindset, and like I don't feel bad about it and it keeps me sustainable, then like I'm gonna do that. Does that make sense? But somebody else, like that might not work for them.
I don't think people realize how big of a deal that is either. Someone who's had a restrictive past, being able to incorporate that into your weekly routine and then not be like, well, I've already had this. I might as well have another one that I'm saving for another 2 days or
Yeah.
order something in. Like, congratulations. That's a huge
Thank
improvement.
you. Yeah, 100%. And I actually sometimes challenge, like, I think that's how you get there, though. I think it's so funny that when we sometimes are in our journeys and we have this restrictive mindset, we think, okay, like let me not have it and not go into these binge modes, but it actually takes you practicing having it. So it's like kind of counterintuitive, right? Like you think, oh, I shouldn't have it, that'll get me to my goals. But if you actually practice the habit of having something and then stopping, like having that self-talk with yourself and saying, okay, like something I used when I was going through this was I'm like telling myself or like asking myself, will this go extinct? Because like
Right.
sometimes when we have this quote unquote bad food, we go into this mindset of, well, I failed, and then we just want to binge or we want to eat the second one, like you said. So I think it's like so important to like bring ourselves back and then be like, is this going extinct? Do I need to have two or three or four? Like, no, I can have another one in 2 days. And that's what creates the healthy habit is that I say, okay, I'm not restrict. This is not restrictive. So I can have another one tomorrow or the next day if I want. So I don't need to have two today.
Exactly. It's not that all or nothing, which is so hard to break the cycle of.
It is, but you have to practice. Like it's really just about like recreating those habits that you already have.
I want to know more about your apparel brand now, Miko Collective. What
Yeah.
was the inspiration behind starting your own brand? At what point did this kind of come into your fitness journey?
Ooh, okay. So I feel like this is like a big question to unpack.
Is.
I mean, the biggest thing for me was that I love fashion. I love buying. I'm like constantly online shopping. I love looking good. I feel like that is something that motivates me also, is that like having like a cute activewear set, like it's exciting. But the biggest thing was like initially obviously being in the fitness industry and loving the gym. I am a huge online shopper. I love buying new clothes. And I found that honestly getting new sets and getting new activewear helped me keep motivated. Like when I feel confident and good in a set, like it just helps. I feel good in the gym as well. So that was number one. So this is over actually COVID. And I just kind of found that I was going online and I was like constantly not being able to find what I wanted. There was no neutral sets. And I found that I was going for like my body has always fluctuated. Like I've always just been that person. Like sometimes I'm lean, sometimes I'm, 10, 15 pounds heavier. And that's just how my body's been. But I always had those things, like those outfits that I chose when I felt good and the outfits I felt like I chose when I had my period or whatever. And I was like, why is there not one that I always choose, that I always feel confident in, that wasn't like cutting my stomach or was seamless. So I just decided that I wanted to start my own and I just started looking into it. But it's kind of like a deep story. I was engaged and I was supposed to get married and he actually ended up cheating on me. And it literally was like the worst thing in my entire life. And the only reason I tell this story is because it completely like flipped my life upside down. And I would have never had the confidence to start this brand if that hadn't have happened. I always had like inklings to do stuff like this, but I truly just like didn't have the confidence to do it. And when that happened, I really was like put onto this like slate of a new life that I was back to like ground zero. I hit rock bottom. I was, sad. I felt worthless. And I started doing this like big self growth journey. And it got me to this point of thinking that, like life can change like this. And a lot of times we have these things that we really want to do or we think about doing and we get into this scarcity mindset. And I realized in those moments and like from that hardship that things can change in 2 seconds. And so why are we not going for the things that we want to go for? And I realized that, I was like, I could do this if I wanted to, but I was a little bit scared. And it just like pushed me to things could change, things can fail regardless, even things that you think are so certain. And so I was like, I'm just going to do it. And now I have an activewear brand.
Oh my god. First off, I'm so sorry, but with saying that,
Don't be sorry.
it's like a blessing in disguise. The universe truly, and this might sound woo-woo, I don't think it will to my audience. They know me
No.
well enough, but the universe
Yeah.
has your back. There is always a plan for something, and even if you can't see it right away, in a year, a couple years, a few months even, you'll see
Yeah.
that come to fruition. And I think this was the thing that pushed you. And I often ask entrepreneurs, what gave you the courage to start a brand, knowing all the things you know
Yeah.
now? And a lot of times it's being in that position where you feel a bit unsafe or you need that push to really start living your own life. So thank you for sharing that journey. I think whether people are going
Yeah.
through a similar situation or looking for that push, I think it'll be really inspiring for them.
Yeah, and 100%. And that's like the biggest thing is that, like, again, can shift and change. And sometimes you're in these like moments where you literally think nothing's going to get better. And it's like, I can tell you from my experience, like, I was in such a bad place. Like, I was so unhappy. I was so sad. Like, I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I felt worthless. Like, I felt like I'd never have like fulfillment again. And you look back, like that was only 3 years ago now, or 2.5 years ago. And I am in an insanely different place. Like I've accomplished all these things and I'm only at the beginning of that. But if I hadn't have like been pushed to that point where like all these bad things were happening, all these good things like wouldn't be. So it's just reminding yourself when you're in those moments like that you can always grow from things.
Do you think that your background in fitness also helped you achieve this mindset, like of being able to push through, especially doing a bikini competition? It's insane the amount of training and discipline you need. In hindsight now, are there things that you think transferred over from fitness into being an entrepreneur?
I think that I've been doing a lot of thinking about it lately, actually. And I think being a swimmer definitely was something that created a ton of discipline for me, especially because it's such an individual sport. And now I'm a solo founder. And I think that it really pushes you to like, have to almost like work on your own and go for your goals. So I definitely think that fitness pushes over and it also I think it also really taught me that like it's all in baby steps. Because
Mhm.
it's like that for fitness, right? Like it's not an overnight thing and you have to truly be so consistent. And when you get into like bikini or like your fitness journey, it's not a 2 or 3 week thing. It's like, week 1 to 4, 4 to 8. And like every single time it's like a stepping stone. And so I feel like for business, like I have that mindset as well that sometimes, it's a really slow progress, but just reminding yourself to like trust that process, I think from fitness is like really transferred over for me. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people realize that planning things out in small chunks will get you so much further than having one big goal. In school, we talk about SMART goals at the time, and back
Yeah.
then it was kind of like, okay, whatever, like teach me about accounting, like this is what I'm paying tuition
Yeah.
for. But honestly, that's what gives you that consistency and that drive to keep going and reach all these small steps and milestones, then eventually have this big goal come to fruition.
100%. Like, absolutely. It always is baby steps. And I think we can get really overwhelmed. And I find this like a ton with my clients is that they want these, like, let's say you want to lose 15 pounds. Like, they're like, well, I'm not seeing the pound change, like the 5 pounds. And I'm like, take a step back. And if you lose a pound a week or like a pound and a half a week over 12 weeks, that's your 15 pounds, right? It's like breaking it down into all those small steps. And it can seem so overwhelming and cause people to not even start. Like, literally, I feel like fitness and business are the exact same in this sense because it's like, it's exactly like, oh, I want to make $100,000, let's say, whether that's literally just a financial goal or I want to lose 20 pounds. When you say I want to lose 20 pounds or I want to make $100,000, that's like, holy cow, that's like a big number. But then if you say, okay, what if I break it down into like every 2 weeks and you're like, okay, that's not that bad. Like I can lose a pound and a half every 2 weeks. Like, and it's exactly like that, just making it like smaller so that it doesn't seem as daunting and it feels like you can actually achieve it.
This is all great to talk about, and I feel like it's simple in theory, hard in practice.
Yeah.
But do you have advice for
100%.
people? Maybe they're really motivated, they started, but there's always going to be obstacles that come along the way, whether it's fitness or business. But how do you now shift your mindset when you're faced with an obstacle in your business?
Mm, that's a hard one. I think that having a good community is really, really important. And especially being someone who is like a solo founder, I think that you and I were just talking about that, like just having people that you can kind of like bounce ideas with and just knowing that like things can shift and change and not, again, like I think it's not having that like all or nothing mindset as well and knowing that things are going to change and you're going to fail, but then asking yourself like, okay, what could I change and do different and just improve next week? And I think that's kind of the way that I like to look at it and just remind myself as well that everyone has like their steps, if that makes sense.
So we were just talking about community, and that's a big factor for your brand and staying motivated. But do you have any tips for people looking to start a business and grow their own community, especially in the online space?
Yeah, of course. I think in the online space, it's obviously, it can seem like really hard, especially right now. And it's definitely not as easy as it used to be. But I think just like being really authentic to you and being consistent, again, just like showing up consistently, figuring out like what you actually are passionate and love. I think that I used to like really focus on like trends and think that with like exactly like TikTok, for example. When I
Mhm.
first started, I thought that you had to do dances and I had to be doing like what other people are doing. But I think showing up authentically as you is so important. And then also coming from a place of like actually teaching and asking yourself, like, what will somebody get something from? So, for example, like teaching them education, mindset, maybe you learned something and just like serving. I feel like that is such a good place to come from when it comes to starting your own community or starting a social media account now because it is so there's so many people and how you stand out is really how you like actually resonate with somebody else. So I think those are some really good things.
I think authenticity is so important. I feel like I say this quite often on the podcast with guests, but
Yeah.
a lot of times your audience is smarter than not yours, but you in general, people give them credit
Yeah.
for. And it's really easy to see when you're just putting on a face to be in line with the trend. And
Yeah.
even now, people are like, why is Alex Earl blowing up on TikTok? So many
Yeah.
people do makeup videos, but she's so authentically herself and
Yeah.
people can connect with her. I think that's the magic of online if you're looking for that viral video or that really fast growth, that's one side of it. And then
Yeah.
when you're engaged with your audience, it will just attract the right people over time.
Yeah, of course. And I feel like it's hard. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy because it's really hard. And I feel like comparison comes up so much in social media. Like, it truly does. And to sit here and just say, like, oh, it's just easy to be authentic, even myself, like, I still struggle with it sometimes on being like, should I say that? Like, are people going to judge me? Or, like those feelings come up, I think, just naturally always. It's like always going to. But I think just pushing past it. And I think when you have those feelings of, this makes me uncomfortable, or should I share this? That's like your cue to do it,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Because it's like
Embrace the cringe.
literally because that's what resonates with people. It's like the rawness and the fact that, like normally when you're struggling with something or you have something that comes up, et cetera, like 100 other people are feeling the same way. So I think and again, it's just like you only have one life. And I think sometimes we get in this like, yeah, worry about what other people are going to think. But as long as you're being authentic to yourself and, like doing something that you love, and if you're serving others, and especially even when you're small and you have a small account or a small community, just remember, I try really hard to think of like, even if I impact one person, like that's amazing. Because if you thought about like you going out in the real world and you like telling something to somebody and then being like, you honestly like made my day or changed my day or my mindset, you would be so stoked about it if it was in person. But for some reason, if we get like only like 100 or 200 views, we'd be so sad about it. But what if you impacted two people's days?
That's such a great mindset
Right? Like,
because I'm with a big group of people. Like, I'm like shadow banned for some reason on TikTok. Like, getting past
no,
1,000 views is like so hard. But I think that's a lot of people on TikTok, especially it's
mine's
been
rather
really
now.
the last month that I've been consistent with posting videos and trying to
Yeah.
get a community on that platform.
Yeah.
But one thing TikTok has really taught me is that no one has had a unique experience. All those weird experiences as a kid or as an entrepreneur, people across the globe go through them. And the more that you talk about your journey, the more people will connect with you.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like that's actually how we connected, like, was just the fact
Yeah,
that I was saying, like, as an entrepreneur, it can be so lonely. And I think that's the thing. Like, sometimes we don't want to talk about those things, but if you don't post that, and at in the moment, you might be like, this is kind of a stupid video or whatever. Like, you might not think that it matters, but then it resonates with someone and it builds a friendship or it builds a community or just like a business mentor, whatever.
exactly. And I think that's what people want to see too. They want to be part of something. So if you're giving them this like
Yeah.
olive branch to hold on to, then the
Yeah.
right people will find you.
Yeah. 100%. I agree.
I always ask my guests this, and this is one of my favorite questions because I'm always excited what the answer will be. But do you
Okay.
have a product, resource, book, TV show, literally anything you're loving that you want to recommend to the listeners?
Okay, I feel like I have a lot of things that I love.
Okay,
um,
great.
but okay, so let's start here. So first off, I mean, I know that so many people post it, but just a, like 5 minute journal, I feel like it's really great. It again it's like a really sustainable way to do your like gratitudes in the morning. That takes you literally 5 minutes. We love the Stanley Cup. That's everyone has it. But honestly, like you drink so much more water. And then I love the Mindset Mentor podcast. It's honestly the best. And they're really quick episodes. So if you want to like go for a walk and you need like a 20-minute thing to listen to, Mentor podcast is one of my favorites.
Those are great. I have that in my weekly rotation as well. It
Oh my
really like
goodness.
changes your
We're the
mood in the
same.
morning.
Yeah. I love it. It's the best. It's the best. Yeah.
Before I let you go, Shauna, where can everyone find you and Miko Collective?
Ooh, okay, so Miko Collective is at Miko Collective on TikTok or Instagram, MYKO Collective. And then myself is at Shauna Jense Fitness. And again, I'm on Instagram and TikTok as well.
Thank you so, so much for coming on
Of
the podcast. You're
course. That
welcome
was
back
so great.
anytime.
Thank you. It was so great to chat.